22 minutes before 9 here on Morning Live. So just under 10% of the 5 trillion rand managed by private sector asset managers is managed by majority black-owned asset managers. This is according to the 10th annual BE.Economics Transformation in South Africa Asset Management Survey. It was published by 274 investment managers. Fatima Vawda, who is, of course, the MD of 274 Investment, and she joins us now in studio to tell us a little bit more. Good to have you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good morning, Leanne. Good to be here.
Worrying figures. It really is. I mean, you'd think that we would have moved a little bit further than this, but we really haven't. What is stopping transformation in this sector?
So, I mean, we've been conducting this research for the past 10 years, and what we have found is that the needle has shifted a little bit, but it hasn't shifted, the expectation you would have after all of these years that you would have had quite a big shift in transformation in the financial services sector. I think the challenge we have right now is that when you look at that 5 trillion rands, it's really made up of retirement fund assets and retail assets. So retail assets are those monies that the ordinary South African spends in the unit trust sector. We have had large public sector pension funds being sensitive to inclusivity and supporting black asset managers to facilitate transformation in the industry. So we have got a lot of support coming from public sector retirement funds, but largely corporate sector retirement funds have not been supportive of advancing black industrialization, particularly within asset management. But the figures across the financial services sector are really concerning 24 years after democracy. So whilst we only publishing this research in the asset management sector, the figures in the stockbroking industry, the insurance industry, the banking industry, etc., is not that far off. The skewed racial ownership of the sector, including the participation of black people within the sector and the participation of independents, is also a big concern. I mean, added to that, if you see the World Bank recently published a report that South African financial products and services are extremely complicated relative to other countries in the world. So not only are the majority of people, the marginalized, not active within the system as participating within the system, but also the products and services that are being offered to the larger base of South Africans is not very simple to understand, very complicated, etc. So government has recognized that this is a challenge. And for that reason, Parliament held the largest ever financial sector hearings last year and subsequently published a report. The chairperson of SCOF, Yunus Karim, published a report at the end of the year in 2017. And that report is going to inform the agenda for the upcoming Financial Sector Summit to be hosted by President Cyril Ramaphosa in October this year at NADLAC.
Okay.
So we're seeing some progress being made. And I think tangible data and statistics definitely inform policy making, and that's what we as 274 investment managers try to do through the publication of the survey.
I mean, you're basically one of the only organizations that actually research this sector. So if we can dig a little deeper into it, how do you go about conducting the research with asset managers? And what are the sectors that you find asset managers are actually managing, these black-owned companies?
So first of all, I mean, it's a very intense research project. I have 15 highly skilled investment professionals that work over a 6-month period to put the survey together, to think about the questions, and the questions are very important because if you ask rubbish, you're going to get out rubbish. So if you want to inform and you want to get the correct view of participants, you've got to ensure that the questions you ask do make sense. So we have a very strong investment team that drives the whole process, that informs the questionnaire, that opens up the questionnaire to the public, and the participation is restricted to more than 50% black-owned asset management firms. Also, you've got to have more than 50% of your team has got to be black in terms of investment professionals. The board of directors has got to be more than 50% in terms of representation. And if you meet those minimum requirements, you can participate in the survey. what we have found is that the skill base is largely concentrated in the equity market, in the domestic JSE equity market.
Okay.
And you find that most of the mandates currently are being managed in that space. Having said that, the opportunity set for delivering investment returns is very, very wide. And what we are really concerned about at the moment is that the asset allocators that are supporting black asset managers, such as the likes of the Public Investment Corporation, etc., need to enhance those mandates and not restrict those mandates to just domestic listed equities. We need black skills to be managing emerging market equities, developed market equities, emerging market fixed income bonds, hedge funds, private equity, and we want to be able to build skill and capacity in those areas, because the sustainability of this industry very much depends on the level of intellectual property and skill you have in the industry.
This is really interesting research. And if we look a little further into the survey, it's saying that only 10 firms out of a total of 48 black-owned firms manage 84% of the 490.3 billion rand that the is under black asset management subsector. And a single firm, Quanta Asset Managers, is responsible for 30% of that.
Yeah. So I think this speaks to the length of business. So the longer you've been in business, so out of the 48 firms, there are only a handful of firms that are older than 15 years old, older than 10 years old. The majority of the firms are, in fact, under 5 years old. So the length with which you've been in business is correlated to the size of the business, because if you had a longer time, the early starters, the guys who started up their businesses 10, 15, 20 years ago has got a little bit of a head start relative to the guys that came in later.
And reputation and trust, because people are entrusting you with their money here. So it's
absolutely correct.
Big thing.
But the biggest barrier is access to markets and access to capital.
Okay.
And so to become a household brand, to be on the fingertips of people's psyche, you know, you've got to be able to advertise, you've got to have the television ads, you've got to be advertising in the corridors of OR Tambo, you've got to do all of those things.
You've got to play with the big boys, and that's the problem.
And that requires an enormous amount of capital to be able to distribute and gain access to markets.
Yeah.
So I think we will see a serious bit of consolidation within the industry, and it has to come. We have seen a lot of attrition as well. So people have not been patient enough and have become exhausted with the system and give up. So in the last 12 months, we've seen 4 companies close down as well.
Okay.
And that's just a natural evolvement of where the industry will go to.
On a positive note, but it's positive, but then it becomes a little bit negative, is that currently, from 2009, there's been a 243% increase in black asset management companies, which is good news. However, as you mentioned, it's the longevity, is that they haven't managed to sustain it, and a lot have closed down. And I think it's because of the factors that you're indicating. But it's a very high turnover rate. But are you hoping, and if you can very quickly, that things will change as you're talking about Parliament's getting involved? They're going to be a little bit more legislation, open up this industry a bit more. Do you think this space is going to change?
I think so, and I think given where we are in South Africa at the moment and the challenges we face, if we do not fix these things, our situation gets worse.
Yeah.
And so parliamentarians, politicians, stakeholders need to understand that you have to deal with these hard issues if you want to be around for a long time, if you don't want to remain in this recessionary environment, etc. Because the clamour for financial sector transformation by black people in this country is very strong on the agenda, and it has to be done.
Yeah. It's real. It's a tough economic environment. You're dealing with a country in a recession right now. So all the help is needed right now, but it needs to be transformed. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you so much for coming in. I imagine people can just jump onto your website, read this. The report will be there? Yeah, absolutely. It's on social media. We hosted the Deputy President of the EFF in launching the survey yesterday. So there's a lot on social media. There's on the websites, etc. Okay. Yeah. 27-4 investment managers. Fatima Vawda, MD of 27-4. I keep on saying that. Yeah, talking to us here on the program. It's one of those names you won't forget, because you'll get it wrong the first time and then hopefully remember it forever. All right, let's take a break. We're going back